Amen. Today we're ending our series, The Alone God. This is the last of the 3-week series about God is all we need. He is all we need in our spirit, all we need in our mind, and all we need in our life. So this morning, we'll be focusing on God is alone in our life. In the passage we read earlier, Paul tells us what we need. In that passage is part of the letter of the church of Corinth. And Paul is defending his apostleship. And Paul tells him, I do not have to defend myself. Jesus is all I need. I want to remind everyone who's with us this morning or even listening to me today that Jesus is all we need. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. When we're without Jesus, that is when we're in trouble. You can do nothing in or by yourself. Jesus is everything. Without him, we are nothing. Just like we sang this morning, the battle belongs to the Lord, right? So when you realize that and you put that in your heart, your life begins to see, you begin to see your life differently. So let's read that passage again in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 4 and 5. We have such trust through Christ toward God, not that we are sufficient in ourselves to take credit for anything of ourselves, but our sufficiency is from God. If God is everything we need for our spirit to be transformed, and he's everything we need for our minds to be renewed, then it would be easy for us also to believe that he's everything we need in our life. And when I'm talking about our life, I'm not talking about the internal life that we're, the eternal life that we're given through Christ. I'm not talking about that type of life or the new life that we received at salvation. I'm talking about the everyday actions that we do in our flesh. Our work, our school, our family interactions, going to the store, doctor's office, paying our bills, all those kind of life stuff. This is the life I'm talking about. God is the alone God, all we need in our life. One of the names of God is Jehovah Jireh, which means the Lord our provider. The Lord will provide. It's so wonderful to know that our God is our source for everything we need. And he cares about everything we need. He's not up there like, well, you got stuff, like I was telling the kids. Good luck with that, right? He cares for our needs. There's no need so small that he doesn't know about it, and nothing too big that he can't provide for. So who knows who Asaph is in the Bible? Anybody? Got one. Excellent. Right. So I didn't know him. I would read it, and I didn't really connect who he was, really. And so I thought, well, today would be a good day to, since I'm using one of his things he wrote, to find out who he was. Well, Asaph was a Levite and one of the three chief musicians who were appointed by David to be over the music services of the tabernacle. And he was selected by the Levites to lead the music even when David brought the ark back into Jerusalem. So it's a pretty important guy. His sons were also elected to lead the 24 group of musicians during the dedication of Solomon's temple. So a pretty important guy in the music world with the nation of Israel. Asaph was a spiritually minded man, gifted in music and gifted in praise. And his impact upon his own family lasted down through the centuries and actually has lasted down even to you. Asaph wrote about 12 of the Psalms that we have today. So when we look at the book of Psalms and we read them, most of them are from David. About 12 of them are written by him. And Psalm 73 is one that I read this week that it struck my heart as it was about the topic we're talking about today, but it struck my heart in a different way. And I want you to see kind of how that kind of landed out in my mind this week. So he starts off saying that he knows that God is good to Israel. I know, God, you're good to Israel. And that he is good to the pure in heart. God, I know that you're good to those who love you. And, and it's almost like that aspect of like when someone says, well, God's good. Yeah, God's good. I know God's good, But then he makes an interesting turn in verse number 2 of Psalm 73. He says this, but as for me, my feet almost stumbled. My steps had almost slipped. For I was envious at the boastful. I saw the prosperity of the wicked, For there are no pains in their death. Their bodies are fat. They're not in trouble as other people, nor are they plagued like others. To me, this might be one of the most honest, real passages in the Bible. Like, this is something all of us think, but no one wants to say it, right? I'll have people even come to me and say, I know this is bad. I know it's bad. I know it's horrible. I know God's probably mad at me for thinking this, but why is that guy not getting in trouble when he's, right? How come I'm struggling and I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, but that guy's not even caring about God? And look, he's got a nice car, and we all think that. Though. We're at work, and you're struggling. You're giving the good effort. You're doing everything you're supposed to do. You're showing up on time, and some guy comes in late every day, leaves early every day, doesn't do half the work, and they get a raise, right? And we all think this, and this is exactly what he's saying. This is what's in his heart, and he writes it down in a song. He's being honest with all those who listen to it. He almost slipped up. He almost stumbled, but he didn't. But he almost did. Why? Because he got envious, right, of other people's lives. He watched others boasting of their good life. He saw people who were prospering in their lives of pleasure. He saw other people die without pain, even though they lived carelessly and could care less what God wanted, right, in their lives of ease and gluttony. He watched people who lived their life without a care for God in their life, and they didn't offer anything, right? Why do these things bother him? Well, he gives us a reason in verse 13 and 14. He says this, surely I have kept my heart pure for nothing and washed my hands in innocence. For all the day long I am plagued and chastened every morning. Why am I even doing what I'm doing? Why am I even going to church? Why am I even praying? Why am I even giving offerings to God? Why am I even going through the motions here? Because I'm doing, and I'm like plagued every day. I have stuff going on every day that I'm struggling with. What is the deal, God? Right? Pretty honest, right? Pretty real, down to earth speaking. Right? He's lived a good life for what? Nothing. The evildoers go through life with ease, but he is good, and every day is difficulty. Every day it seems like he's punished. And then look at the changes, his thoughts. In verse 16, he says this, when I thought to understand this, it was troublesome in my eyes. When I tried to understand why I was thinking this, I knew I wasn't right. It troubled me in my heart. It troubled me in my eyes. Until I went in the sanctuary of God, then I understand their end. He tried to understand this. It didn't seem right until he went and spent some time with God alone. Then he understood. Before he was bitter in his heart and it pierced his feelings, and now he sees God in his life. And this is where the verse that struck me comes in. After all the turmoil and after all the trouble in his heart, he spends some time with God alone, and he says this in verse 25, whom have I in heaven but you? And there is nothing on earth that I desire besides you. He says, in my life, who else do I need? What else do I need other than you? All that I have, all that I need is satisfied with you in heaven and you on earth. Now, the same may seem like an exaggeration. There's nothing on earth that man desires but God. Is Asaph saying he doesn't desire food or water or clothes or shelter or friendship? No. He's saying of the many things I desire and need, at the core of all of them is God. Think of human relationships. These relationships are God's gifts to us, really. Right? God said when he created Adam, it is not good that man should be alone. Right? He wanted mankind to have relationship and companionship. The statement isn't simply about marriage. It's also about the basic human need for friendship and companionship. God didn't say, I'm all you need. Right? But he did say, I'll give you all you need. I made you to have needs other than me. And since I made you that way, I will fulfill those needs that you have. So yes, he made us to be hungry, but he's going to fulfill them. He made us to need companionship, but he's going to fulfill them. He made us to have feelings and hurt feelings and sadness, but he's going to be there to fulfill those as well. Think about it. God was walking with Adam in the garden. Adam and him, everything's wonderful. Adam's naming all the animals. There's an elephant. There's a duck-billed platypus. I mean, he's making all these names. God's walking with him. He's talking with him. And God says, I'm not all you need. Right? And you're like, yeah, you are. You're God. You're all I need. He goes, no, you need friendship and companionship. But you're going to get that through me. I'm all you need because I'm going to satisfy all your needs. But you still need a friend. You still need companionship. What else do we need in life? Wisdom for raising our kids. Courage in the face of opposition. Peace under pressure. Faith in the face of tragedy. Comfort when times of sadness and loss. Love when you feel alone. Healing when you feel wounded. Strength when you feel overwhelmed. When you say, I feel rejected, God says, I'm your acceptance. When you say, I feel insecure, God says, I am your security. When you say, I feel angry, he says, I am your peace. He says, when you say, I feel unloved, he says, I am your love. When you say, I feel defeated, he says, I am your victory. When you say, I feel hopeless, he says, I am all your hope. When you say, I feel overwhelmed and undervalued, he says, I am your worth. I am your love. I am your sovereignty. I am your joy. I am your intimacy. I am your adequacy. I am your kindness. I am your wisdom. I am your humility. I am your way. I am your acceptance. I am your faithfulness. I am your rest. I am your need meter. I am your mind. I am your believer. I am your desire. I am your freedom. And I could go on and on and on straight out of Scripture. How he fulfills all that we need. I am your salvation. I am your forgiveness. I am your trust. I am your success. I am your guide. I am your endurance. I am your shepherd. He is all that we need. Where can you get everything you need for life? In God, who is the all-sufficient creator. So now look at this verse in 2 Peter. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3. He says this, his divine power has given to us all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him who has called us by his own glory and excellence. Peter is making an unexpected claim. In Jesus Christ, you will find everything you need for life. This challenges the way people often think about our Christian faith. We often view our lives as compartments of our life. My work life, my family life, my playtime, my hobbies, right? My hopes and dreams over here, all these different compartments, right? All these different areas of our life. But then there is the faith compartment, right? It's a very important part of my life, but it's a compartment all on its own. Most believers would agree that Jesus is everything we need for our faith. He's enough to fill that compartment. Here's my faith compartment. Jesus fills that, good to go. But we're not sure how he is everything for everything else. How does he fill the needs for my work life, my family life, my, hobby life, my fun life, right? How does he fill all those needs? Peter tells us something completely different. He says that Jesus is not just everything you need for your faith, but everything that you will face in life. Peter tells us something completely. He says, given all that we have, all that goes on, all that pertains to life, he is all we have. Think about what that means for getting through life. Think about your first experience of discovering that the world was unfair. You remember that? Some of you are a little younger, maybe for you, you're just now figuring that out. But I remember as a young kid, just realizing that life is just not fair. I remember growing up, my brother and I were 14 months apart, my older brother. We were 14 months apart, and we were almost raised like twins. In fact, we have pictures of us dressed in the same clothes because we're so close to age. And my mom, it was just easier to raise two kids that were next to each other, kind of like twins, whatever. And I can remember in my mind the first time I realized that he was kind of older than me. It's when he went off to junior high. Because we were in the same elementary school growing up, and we did everything together. And then all of a sudden, he's going to a different school, and I'm still back at the old school. And I remember that around the same time, we had there's now 4 of his boys, and my parents were having uh, fostering little infants, stuff like that. I remember that started. So that whole process, and so he moved some rooms around. And all of a sudden, that I was sharing my room with my older brother. Now I'm not sharing my room with the older brother. I'm sharing my room with a younger brother now. And I was like, wait, this is not fair, right? It's not fair. And I remember it was just that whole process of, he got furniture for his new room, and I remember having those. Now I know later on I got my own room and I got my own furniture and it all got evened out, But at the time, I remember thinking, is this the way life's always going to be? Right? Do you remember that time when it kind of hit you? When life just wasn't fair? How about your first experience of rejection? Right? Maybe a girlfriend, a boyfriend, or your first that you're on the outside of the group. You thought you were on the inside, and then all of a sudden you're not on the inside. You're actually on the outside. And like you have friends over there talking, and they're not inviting you. You're just kind of like just stand over here, right? That kind of feeling of being an outsider, right? How about your first experience of struggles with your own emotional moods? When you start realizing that your emotions are things that control your life and you can make choice. When you're a little kid, you don't think about that. Like, I'm angry, give me food. I'm, whatever. You don't think about it. But as you get older, you start realizing that these emotions control the way you think and the way you act and the way you respond to people. And you kind of get, wow. Well, Jesus is everything you need for dealing with those things. Christ is everything you need for each and every one of those. Jesus is everything you need for your emotion issues as well. God's divine power has given you everything you need for life through your knowledge of Jesus. Everything you need for life in old age, everything you need for married life, everything you need for single life, everything you need for midlife crisis. We're talking about life in all its fullness. And Peter says, Jesus Christ is sufficient not only for our faith, but for every part of our life. If you can see this truth in your mind, it will change how you follow Jesus in your daily life. Jesus, Sunday morning, got my faith compartment, got that done. You're filled, went to church, good to go. But then Monday comes along, you're at work. Do you realize that Jesus is your sufficiency even at work? Or you're at the grocery store and you're struggling with paying your bills. He's the one that's there helping you with that as well. When you start realizing that, it begins to change your daily life. Peter uses the phrase for life and godliness in this verse. What is meant by that? We looked at what it meant by life, but what does it mean by godliness? Well, godliness sounds scary. Right? We got to act godly, right? And it kind of scares us because some people have used that as kind of a whipping post to act like a better Christian, right? And so sometimes it's been like for life and acting right, right? And that sometimes we have that idea. But in reality, this is not what it means at all. Godliness simply means a life that is centered for God, a devotion to Him, a life of worship to Him. So when we think about, are we worshiping God at work? We should be. Do we worship God at the grocery store? We should be. Do we worship God when we're out riding on motorcycles, right? Right? So every time we are out and doing things in life, it doesn't mean you have to stop and sing a song. Just talking to Him is worship. Just thinking about Him is worship. Just realizing He's present is worship. Just living a devoted life centered in God. But this doesn't come from doing good things in life. It too comes from Christ. In Jesus, you will find everything you need for life that flows out of a passion for God. The life He's talking about is not an artificial one when you're trying to conform to certain religious expectations or trying to be a good person. I hear people all the time, and I know what they're saying, but I want you to kind of think about this thought in your mind of getting it out of your word knowledge. If you ever say this, I'm trying to pray more. I'm trying to live a better life. I'm trying to get this out of my. If you use the word trying in any part of that, get that out of your vocabulary. Why? Because we don't just try, we just do. And when you just do, it may mess up. You may fall. You may not do a good job. But trying sounds like I'm striving to be better. And Christ says, I'm your sufficiency in all that you need. You don't have to strive to be better. Just let me live my life in you and through you, and we'll be fine. But I messed up last week. That's all right. Jesus said, I didn't mess up. But humans mess up. I was watching a show. I was telling Miss Kim about that this morning. What a profound thought this guy said. Just a normal TV show to get my mind off of stupid stuff. And a mom is adopting a little infant, and it's got some diseases and sicknesses, whatever. And so she's trying to adopt this baby, and she has no clue how to be a mom. Like, she's just messing everything up. She's reading the books and trying to figure out all the answers because she's a smart lady and she can know all the answers, right? And at one point, she has a baby on the changing table, and she reaches down, and the box of diapers are empty. And she reaches over the bag, and she's holding the baby like this, reaches over the bag and can't find the diapers. And she's like, oh, what a horrible mom I am that I run out of diapers. And about that time, someone knocks on the door, and the baby's crying, and he goes, man, you're doing a great job muddling through life. And she took that as an insult. He said, no, we all muddle through life. And I thought, what a profound thought. That's exactly what it is. We are human beings. We don't know everything. There is not a book to know everything perfectly and do everything right. Well, the Bible. But it doesn't tell you how to change a diaper. So, it's not everything, right? And so we just muddle through life. And the great thing, God says, that's okay. I am your sufficiency, that all things that pertain to life and godliness, all things that pertain to your life and just muddling through even your diapers and your life of devotion to God, I'm there for you. I've got it. If you just let me do it. He's talking about a life that is energized by the power of God for everything you need. And the freedom for that kind of life you'll find in the knowledge of Jesus. Jesus tells us to come, learn of him. Do you want to have peace in your life? He says, come, learn of me. Do you want to have joy in your life? He says, come, learn of me. We talked about last week about God was the lone God in our mind, and that by renewing our mind, our lives are transformed. Well, this is how that works. Our minds are renewed, and so now our lives become transformed because now we're looking at life differently. We're now looking at life as part of worship. We're looking at the muddling of life as we're just going through life, trying to get through it, as worship and devotion and godliness as we're walking with him. So we're going to look at it from a different angle. We who are believers struggle with serving in his kingdom. Do we have the ability? Do we have the knowledge? Do we have the time? Do we have the money? These and all these other questions that we ask ourselves when thinking about the idea of life of worship or serving in God's kingdom. These are the questions and concerns, but look at this passage in John 15:5. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who reigns in me and I in him bears much fruit. Without me, you can do nothing. So this verse is making it very plain, very clear that we can do all that he asks us to do, but that requires us to allow Jesus to do it. It's an amazing concept, and it's something that we really struggle with. We can be really good at religion and have a list of the things we're supposed to do. But what we forget about is, here's a list of things to do, but Jesus says, I'm going to do them through you. We forget about that. We go through the list and we're trying. I'm trying. He goes, stop trying. Just yield to me. I got you covered. Right? And so it's not about trying harder. Look, he's the vine. We're just the branches. Where the fruit comes from? It doesn't say go produce fruit. I've heard Christians get that wrong all the time. Nowhere does it say go produce fruit. What are you doing? You're bearing the fruit. So God is the one who has the flow of energy, the flow of nutrients, the flow of everything coming out of him to us as branches. He produces the fruit, and all you got to do is just hang there. And the fruit, as long as you let him be connected to you, and you're in that time of godliness, like I said, this devotion to God, a God-centered life, when you're doing that, then he goes, I got you covered. I'll produce the fruit. I just want you to just bear it out there. Just hang on to it. So you don't have to work hard even in his kingdom. If you've been called to a place of service, know this, Jesus is all you need even in that. He will direct your path to the place where he wants you to serve. If you're looking for something to do in his kingdom, if you're asking him to use you and you're allowing him to live through you, know this truth. He wants to use you, and he wants to use your life for where he wants to reach to the world. And I'll say this also, when we do this in the little things, he'll begin to see him use us in the bigger things. Some people say, well, when you're faithful in the little things, you'll be faithful in the big, he'll use you for big things, like he's testing us out. Now, really, it kind of comes the other way around. When we're faithful to the little things and we see him using us in those little things, all of a sudden it becomes easier for us to allow him to use us in the bigger things. Because he already knows. He goes, I know your limits because you don't trust me. I know your limits because you don't have faith in me. I know your limits and you're not quite on board with what we're doing here. But if you'll get on board with these little things and you start building your faith and trust in what I'm going to do, and you allow me to work through you, and you realize it's a lot easier, then all of a sudden I can start using you in the big things too. That is how Jesus will fill our need for wanting a purpose. As we live our life, many ask, well, what's my purpose? Does my life matter? Does it have meaning? What's the use, as Asaph said, right? The answer is yes. If we would allow Christ to use us when we realize that he is all that we need in our life, then we will live our life in the freedom and the joy and the pleasure because we feel useful and have a purpose that God is using us. Another area in our lives that's a bit more hidden is our eternal life, internal life. Now, we talked about our mind last week, and so that's kind of the idea of the mind, but really I want to talk about how your life looks internally when no one's around. We all have a life that is hidden, the way we live when no one else is there. Let me give you a few examples. Someone who's an introvert or has social anxieties will often, they'll kind of fake it till they make it in public. Then as soon as they get home, they ball up and hide from the outside world, shut off all the lights, shut off all the blinds, and just hide, and sometimes cry, right? No one else knows it because outwardly they're faking it till they make it. They look like they're all powerful, and then as soon as no one's around, they shut everything off and they close down. Someone who's single, either by choice or by other means, will often show outwardly to others that they're okay with being alone. I'm fine with being alone. I'm single. That's where God wants me. But then at home, they're like, God, why am I so alone? It's not fair. And they sometimes cry for companionship. Someone who's an extrovert. Yeah, you think introverts have problems. Try being an extrovert. Right? They always seem to be doing great, and they got to make sure the whole world thinks everything's great because they're an extrovert. And everyone goes, well, they're an extrovert. Everything's fine. But then when they get alone, they feel saddened by the quietness and the realization that they can't do everything right. See, these are just a few, but you may have thought of some other examples in your own life. But the reality is this: Jesus is all we need for those needs as well. When Jesus met the woman at the well, he told her that he was able to satisfy the deepest thirst of her soul and that she would never be thirsty again. And he wasn't talking about salvation. The woman obviously had an internal life that needed to be adjusted and filled. She had some struggles going on in her life, right? She had the many husbands and all that we know about what's going on. And Jesus says, I'm going to deal with your salvation, but I'm going to deal with your daily life as well. Go and enjoy. He says, whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. The water I shall give them will become a well of water springing up of life. Not just salvation, it was an everyday life. Jesus satisfies the very need we have. I've never met a believer who is abiding in Jesus in their life ever feel they lacked anything. I've never met a believer who was abiding in Jesus in their life who longed for things they didn't have. For those believers who are abiding in Jesus in their life have found sweet, cool, soul-satisfying fountain of living water that continually produces water that spills out into every part of their life. But sadly, many believers are just like the Israelites who left Egypt with Moses. Even though they had been delivered from the bondage of Egypt, they still long for things they no longer needed. A passage in Numbers always cracks me up. I read it and I just have to laugh. And I laugh out loud. I literally do an LOL. I literally laugh out loud when I read this. So after leaving Egypt and seeing the miracles that God had done, right, to help them free from the bondage of slavery of Egypt, so we know that kind of thing, right? And after seeing his physical continued presence with them day and night, right? Pillar of fire at night, pillar of cloud by day. After walking across a Dead Sea on dry ground and the water collapsing behind them, the Egyptian army, and never having to deal with Egyptians ever again. After all that, they were hungry, and God produced manna. Manna, every morning they woke up and there was manna. Numbers 11 says this, the manna was coriander seed, and it looked like bdellium, and bdellium is like a fragrant gum. The people went about and gathered it in mills or beat it in a mortar and boiled it in pots and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was like the taste of cakes baked in oil. When the dew fell at the camp at night, the manna fell on it. Oh, wonderful food, beautiful, the best tasting food you can imagine. The smell of coriander and baked cakes. And oh, you just imagine grandma's house, that kind of smell. How much better could it be for them? How much more do they need? God had provided for slavery done, Egyptian army done, right? All the problems they needed done. God said, I got the promised land coming ahead of you. I'm going to give you some food. Here's some manna. Everything they ever wanted, freedom to be in his presence. He's literally walking with them every step of the way. Like they see him, like there's God right there. We see big pillar of fire, right? They see, right? And here's what they said. This part that cracks me up. Numbers 11, verse 4 says, who will give us meat to eat? We remember the fish which we ate in Egypt for free, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our life is dried up. There's nothing at all except this manna before our eyes. Fish for free. They were slaves. Did they not catch that part? Reason why it was free is because they didn't work for money. They worked for the Egyptians, and they did whatever they told them to do. And they go, oh, here's your ration of fish. Oh, yeah, and you could grow your own leeks and onions over there. That's what they missed? Really? Let us go back to the bondage of slavery of Egypt, and let us eat the free fish. We desire free fish. But this is how many believers live their life. Now, it seems silly and ridiculous when I say it that way, right? I'm not trying to diminish or mock anyone. I'm laughing at the Egyptians. I'm not laughing at you. But what I'm trying to do is show you that the feeling is normal and you're not alone. Have you ever stopped and looked back and go, my life used to be better back then? Times were easier back then. Yeah, but you were living in bondage back then. Yeah, I had my whole weekend free. Now I have to come to church on Sunday. Yeah, but you were living in bondage back then, right? We all had this idea of living in the past sometimes and thinking about the past. It wasn't necessarily good. I remember the past when I wasn't living for God. I wasn't even a Christian. I was working all the time and spending my money left and right, having a good time, doing whatever I wanted. It was easier back then. Except I was in bondage. I was in bondage to sin. I was in bondage to the curse of the world, and I knew it. Especially looking back, I definitely know it. Looking back, right? But here's God's answer to them: you people are ridiculous. I am done with you. I'm going back to find some new people to call mine. No, that's not what he said. Right? He did say this, verse 18, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow, and ye shall have meat. For you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, who will give us meat to eat? For it is better for us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. Now, that's a nice statement. You're like, God, you're so good. You're so gracious. You're so kind. You didn't bring up the fact that they were just being really ridiculous. But then God got a little snarky after this. He said, you shall eat not just 1 day or 2 days or 5 days or 10 days or 20 days, but you'll eat meat for a whole month until it comes out of your nostrils and it'll be nauseating to you because you rejected me who's among you and have wept before me. Now God said you're going to get your meat that you're going to ask for, and you're going to get all the meat you need. But people, I was with you. I'm walking with you. I'm right here with you, providing every need you have. The manna that you are eating is the most delicious thing, satisfying, filling thing. You don't need meat. All the nutrients you need in life are right there in that manna. And you want something more than that. Now, Moses got a little worried about how God was going to bring the meat because he asked God, will the flocks and the herds be slaughtered for them? He's like, God, how are you going to bring meat for like a whole month? Like, are we going to have to kill all our animals that we have in order for us to get meat? Because we have animals. We just didn't want to kill them all at one time. Or will the fish of the sea be gathered up and we won't be able to fish anymore? Like, we're going to kill all the fish? Like, how's this going to work, God? There's 1 million plus people here, God. How are you going to feed us so much food that we're going to be coming out of our nostrils? I'm just kind of concerned about this whole thing. Again, why is Moses questioning God? Right? And God responds, no, I'm wanting you and them to see my goodness and realize that I'm your God and they are my people. I will not decimate the flocks or the fish in the sea. I will bring them quail. I'll bring them as much quail as they can eat, and they will still have manna and still have me in their presence. So they will get the quail that will come from, it says from the sea, a wind blowing in. In other words, they don't even know where it came from. And they get all the quail they want every day, and the manna, and God's presence still. God is so good. But like the Israelites in the story, believers who are not walking in the daily freedom of Christ, the dwelling spirit of the fountain of living water, we are doomed to discouragement and failure in our daily walk because we're looking at ourselves, we see ourselves fail, and we're looking at us and see how we're not living up to the standards and we're doing all these things wrong. The challenge you all have before you is put your eyes on Jesus alone and learn to drink from him and to be satisfied with what Jesus can do for you. Who do you need in your life? Jesus. Who do you need in your spirit? Jesus. Who do you need in your mind? Jesus. You may think you need more money, better health, more friends, more whatever, but all you truly need is Jesus. He's the only thing you need, and when you have him, you have everything. Let me ask you this important question. Do you know him? Do you have Christ indwelling in you this morning? If not, ask yourself why. If not, will you come and talk with me or Gabriel or Cindy or Rachel or even Kim? We would love to show you how you can have the Christ indwelling in you permanently. We'd love for you to have that present, satisfying knowledge of Jesus living well flowing out of you. But let's say you already have. You've already put your trust in Christ. You've already put your faith in him and believed in him. You already know that Christ is in you and he's your source of life today. Are you abiding in that truth today? Are you abiding in that truth every single day consistently? I'm not talking about, yeah, I know it, but consistently every day waking up and going, abiding in the truth that Jesus is in me. And if not, ask yourself why. Why not put your spirit of your mind, your heart, your life, why not all those aspects come together? Your mind, your spirit, your life, all come together in the abiding presence of Jesus. He is the lone God. He is all we need in our spirit. He's all we need in our mind. He's all we need in our life. As Asaph said, in my life, who else do I have other than you, God? In my life, who else do I have? Who else do I need other than you? There's nothing on earth that I want or desire other than you. Let's stand and worship our lone God, our always God, in prayer and song this morning. Father God,